Welcome back to Worth the Effort Woodworking, where on multiple different levels, we're doing something a little bit different this time. We're working with metal. Now don't worry guys, this is not going to become a lot of metalworking on this channel. But for those of y'all that have been watching me for a while, every year I do a little shop tour and tell y'all what my goals for the year. Back in January, I did a 2021 tour, and one of my goals was I was going to start doing some bigger projects with a progression going forward. And this year, I wanted to build a teardrop trailer, which necessitated me building a custom trailer frame, which necessitated me learning to weld, which I have never done before. But thanks to one video that went a little bit viral, I could afford a welder and some other tools, so I had at it. And my dad, my sister, and I all went to my brother-in-law's house, who he does welding professionally, and he gave us a weekend crash course. And I can tell you, by far, I was the worst of us. In fact, one element, stick welding, I completely failed at it. I never successfully created a welding arc and a weld more than about 3 inches. After spending an hour and a half, 2 hours sitting there, striking, sticking, pulling it off and stuff. It was horrible. I got so frustrated I had to walk away multiple times. Whereas my dad and my sister, it was like within 3 minutes they were doing nice beads all the way around stuff, and I'm horrible at it. My hope was after that class I could just start welding a trailer, because everywhere I read said trailers are easy to do. Well, I need some practice leading up to that one, so I'm going to start out building some raised garden beds for my new backyard using steel barrels. And trust me, this is not going to be a learning experience for you. In fact, when you watch this, I want you to watch it like you do a car chase on the news, a slow-speed car chase at that. You're waiting for the disaster. There's a 60-70% chance that this project is not going to work out. So just watch it for the entertainment purposes. Either way, I'm going to learn a little bit on welding and get a little bit more experience. Now, I was able to buy 8 55-gallon steel drums for about $100 off of Craigslist. And I also went and spent about $100 on buying some square tubing. It's 14 gauge, which I'm kind of worried that at my skill level, one of the disaster points is I'm just going to melt it and it's not going to join. I'm just going to blow holes all the way through it. But who knows? It was the cheapest stuff I could find that I thought would work out. I'm going to do 2 different projects. Basically, one project, I'm just going to cut barrels in half so I can practice with the plasma cutter. Next up, I'm going to weld up 2 leg pieces and then just combine them up, practicing cutting angles and that kind of stuff, and a crossbar to connect both sides. And I assume that if I tack it to the barrel itself would act like a structural point. And then I'll do a little woodworking on top. But that's my goal. Now, for y'all safety police out there, most of these barrels that I got used, they were for spray foam insulation and stuff like that. And the guy told me that they rinse them out pretty good, though a couple of them are oil barrels. And if there's any oil residue left in there, I'll take them to the car wash, use a degreaser gun, then fill them up with water, dilute it before I work on it. I'm not a total idiot there. Stuck cap my ass. Yeah, it's empty. Now, I know using a plasma torch on a thin piece of metal like this, using these barrels is a bit overkill, kind of like using a sledgehammer to crack walnuts, but it's a tool I've got to learn to use for later applications. And from my understanding, what it does is it creates an arc, an electrical arc, and then just blows air through it to shoot that plasma out. Kind of like a lightsaber gnomes would use, except it's got a huge handle on it. Now, they drive home to you that you're not supposed to touch these tips to the metal because it just gums them up and that can get expensive. these are replaceable. I've got something called a drag chip on it, which I think it's kind of like training wheels, which it does allow you to touch and drag along the metal, and it kind of makes the distance very precise, but you tend to burn them up. To me, that's just kind of a price of playing. And one of the things I learned in my weekend crash course is I cannot draw a line to save my life with this thing. So I'm going to cheat and use this bucket, which seems to be about the right height if I put a piece of board on it. And this will probably burn, that'll probably melt, but it'll give me a cheat to draw that straight line. If not, I'll just cut a little bit lower and try again. So now we had the moment of truth. Did it work? No! Wait, yes! Ah, smoke! Huh. It's not the smoothest cut in the world. Anybody got any ideas how to do it better, or am I just expecting too much out of a plasma cutter? I'll take a wheel to that one. Let's try it on this other one. Maybe we can see what the sparks are doing inside and see if we can make it better. Still got some rough edges. I'll have to figure out how to clean that up. Any ideas out there? Maybe I just need to put a wood trim around the top. That's a little bit too sharp to do gardening around. But no matter. I mean, that's a $15 barrel I cut in half, so I guess each one of these is $7, $8. They'll make a nice planter after I paint them. So let's make another video. Finally! How do you think I should do the rim treatment? If I cut wood blocks around there and just kind of set it on there and then just route it where the groove is and just sit on it. Look at that. Master of the straight line. Now those two were just practice to build me up a little bit in confidence level, though I still couldn't cut a straight line. Next up, I'm going to do all the rest on their side. And what my plan is to take the barrel and on the end, cut it directly in half. So I end up with the end caps halfway up. Then I'm going to cut the sides up a little bit so that I can fold them over a 2x4 to anchor them down and make them secure. So these right here, I'm going to try to fold over, which means those ribs that add its strength, I probably need to cut through them so that I can actually fold it down. Now to help make those cuts, I quickly whipped up this 3-legged stand that's just big enough to come up to the halfway point of these barrels and kind of hold them steady. That way I can align it so that the drain hole is going to be on bottom and I can make straight cuts from there. And it shouldn't move too much. I also think I'm going to cut the sides first, the high sides first, simply because I think if I cut through these beforehand, this will get too wobbly. I think it'll be more stable if I make these cuts first. With that done, I can progress to these ends using this piece to create the straight line. And something I learned in the fiasco of that barrel last time, yesterday, the second barrel, was that slower is better. If I'm seeing sparks on this side of the cut, it means it's not going through, which I looked back at the video and I was a whole bunch. So even though slower makes a rougher cut, sometimes it's a little bit better. And hopefully, that's all it takes to get this knocked off. Or not. Voila. Oh, that might have been a problem. What do y'all think I should do with these top pieces? Next up, I'm going to be doing the legs. And the legs are just going to consist of, two cross pieces and legs coming down together. I'm choosing 15 degrees for the legs for the simple reason that the machines I'm using to cut the stuff have 15-degree indents already built into them. The key things is I want the top one to stretch from one side of the barrel to the other so I can tack it on either side. And the bottom one stretcher is going to connect the two legs. And the only thing that needs to be the same on both sides of the barrel is that bottom one needs to be welded to the bottom of the barrel right there, right on that edge. That way, if for some reason I need to connect the two sides, I can just put a bar across both of them and either screw it or weld it on. I don't think that'll be necessary. But if I screw everything up because of my poor welding skills, as long as I make sure that those are right on the bottom of the barrel, I think everything will be fine. Now to do all this, because, playing around with the metal glue gun, things I'm told move all the time. I don't know if this is how you're supposed to do it, but I created this little metal wood jig. It's this section right here. And I think I can basically clamp that bar there, that bar there, that bar there, and this bar here, and then tack it all up and weld it all together. I don't know. We'll see how it works out. Now to cut the material, I am going to be using a chop saw. This was provided to me for DeWalt for my trailer build video. I'm going to go ahead and use it now. FYI, they also provided to me one of the grinders that you've seen me using so far. This particular saw is one of those ones that has the teeth on it and not that friable wheel like you see on this particular grinder. I don't know why, but as a beginner, that just seems a lot safer to me. Now, you could cut, probably the safest way to cut this material would be with a hacksaw, but you could do it with a jigsaw, a recip saw, the grinders. They make the bigger grinder wheels, or this one right here. Well, another thing I think is kind of cool is you can pretty much touch the material after you cut it. So they say because all the heat from the cutting action goes into the shavings and not into the material itself, unlike a grinder or even a hacksaw or a lot of the other stuff. Now, I do find this chop saw very kind of weird because, you know, the normal saws you have in woodworking, you know, you can put your hand on the unit, you push it down, and then you bring the saw down and it cuts nice thing. But obviously, if you're cutting metal, the metal gets hot, so you can't have your hand there, and they say that this is more likely to grab and stuff like that, so they have these clamping systems. But because the woodworking ones, the fence is always the same, you know, it cuts in the blade right back here, so it's pushing back into the fence. But they say when you're cutting metal, you actually want to have it as far forward as possible when you're cutting it, so the fence itself is mobile. It's designed to go back and forth somehow. This particular one has a little pin you lift up here, and there's little slots it can go into. So you just find the one that's closest to the edge of where you're going to be cutting, and then you clamp it down to work the material so it can't move. I guess that means the teeth, well, no, the teeth aren't pushed. The teeth are still pushing it back. Maybe somebody in the comments can explain the physics of why the fence moves forward on a circular saw, but not on a wood miter saw. So here we go. First cut with a new tool. One of the barrels is filled with water, so let's see if it sizzles. Nope. Not hot at all. Pretty cool. So I guess I'll cut everything to 90 degrees and then I'll go back and put the 15s on the pieces that need it. Let me tell you, I might could get used to this clamping thing. It's kind of nice just to be able to tighten up and step back. And what I'm discovering is this design basically takes up 3/4 of a 20-foot bar, which is how I had to buy them, and I cut them in half at the metal supply place with a little grinder. And each bar cost me roughly 20 bucks, so 15 bucks worth of metal for the two legs. And then yet another example of stupidity learning. If you're going to do this, put on some kind of overcoat or jacket. I'm putting on this cheap welding shirt for the simple reason the glitter this stuff throws off, it goes everywhere and it kind of hurts. Isn't that kind of weird? I'm getting like a feedback in these noise canceling earphones. Probably ought to just use regular earplugs instead of these. I don't know what's going on there. The hardest piece I've found to cut is this piece right here because the measurement's so precise, and that miter saw is not very accurate. Not as precise as I'm used to in the woodworking world. I totally screwed this one up with the measurements and got it off. So what I've resorted to doing is getting it close and just nibbling my way back. And with that now fitting pretty good, it's now to clean off all that brown stuff off of everywhere I'm going to be welding together and then tack it up. So I have my helmet set, I got the welder set, I got my feed set, dipped the nozzle, checked the polarity and plugged in the negative ground, made sure that's clamped to the steel workbench welding table, put on the gloves, sprayed anti-splatter. Then I guess all there's left to do is get at it. I'll put one tack on each corner, flip it over. I might be able to take the clamps off at that point in time, tack the other side, and then keep flipping it until I tack all four corners, and then we'll start welding. Why can't I see? Gentle. Well, cool. Oh crap, I broke it. Moment of truth. Why is it stuck to the table? Okay, so tack the other side. Steel brush it before we can do the rest of the welding. I guess I'll show you how you did. I don't know. Well, that one right there, I just melted the metal. I'm not sure if it's twisted or not, but I think it's just time to go ahead and weld it all up, welding opposite sides. See how we do. That didn't work. I wasn't even on the joint. Can't see what I'm doing. I think it's safe to say that is not good. I punched a hole in it and I didn't even hit the seam. So, let's see, that's the first one. Let's see how the last one looks. So I think that's my last one. That was the first one, which I grinded a lot on. And a lot of them I just totally missed. I mean, like that one right there, I just missed. Don't know what to say. I think it'd be smart for me to hit them with a grinder and go back over these, but in all honesty, these will probably hold up a raised garden. Just won't work for a trailer. Need a lot of practice, but hopefully doing another 10 of these will give me a little bit of practice. Well, my second one went a lot better. Lots better. Except for this last cut right here on the center one, I keep getting this hole in the center, right there. And then I remembered Steve, the guy I took the class from, saying that when you have a enclosed cylinder, like the center section right here, you know, it's welded on both sides, because air's heating up as you weld it, it's wanting to expand and contract, so there's always got to be some kind of weep hole. And if you haven't drilled a hole somewhere in the pipe, it's just going to come out. But before I call it quits tonight, I want to see if this thing is going to work. I've got 2 of these welded up. Obviously they were my practice pieces, so kind of eyeball it straight on one side, get it somewhat centered. Make sure it's flush on bottom, and let's just tack it up. I am going to turn the thickness down to quite a bit smaller because somebody on Instagram told me that I had it too hot. Well, this is 14 gauge, but this is a lot thinner. This is almost like a tin can, so let's go thin. So let's add a tack here. And with those done, maybe we can add a nice long weld right there. In which I don't even get into the weld, I just weld on that right there. Idiot! Now let's see about the other side. I'm not even getting down in there. I probably should have sanded these surfaces. I don't know if that'd make that big a difference. Just got a little impatient, but oh well. Finally, after all of them, I get a halfway decent one. Well, I hope it's halfway decent. Halfway decent. I know it's ugly, but we get to compare the first to the last in this experiment. The key question is it going to hold? I think that's going to work. The question is, how do I do the other side and get it level? And with that, we can see my progression over 10 legs. We've got the last one I did, going through. Dad did that one. He wanted to grind his to see how he did. Coming through. And the first one where I screwed it up. So there's the first one, the very first corner I did. And the last one I did. I didn't grind any because this was more an exercise, not for cosmetics. So next is welding the legs to the tubs. And first that just means, grinding off this paint so I can actually weld to it. And my big concern was actually getting it level because it'd be very easy to get teeter-tottered, so it'd always be three-legging it. Simple solution was just to elevate the tub up to the height you want before you start welding. That way you can just have the legs on the ground. I'm just going to use a box for that. Then just gently flip it over and do the rest of the heavy welding. I screwed up. I successfully welded together 3 of these barrels, and Dad did the 4th. And then I realized I only got 2 legs left, and I got 2 barrels left. What's a craftsman to do? I grade those functional.
Okay.
I think I'm going to cut him off.
Okay. That was what I was thinking.
It was
about
worth
doing.
a try.
Huh?
The original concept was worth a try, but I think it's too much labor. Well, the grand theory of having those wings on this thing to enhance stability. You see, this is a tube, and if you put a lot of weight on over here, there's nothing preventing the sides from coming out, which would allow it to all collapse in on itself. You need something of strength right here. Well, my thinking was if I were to fold that metal over, all of a sudden that flat metal all the way across here, that would prevent it from coming out, and that would give it its stability. But in reality, bending that metal was a biatch. It was not working out very well at all. I could not bend it by myself. Dad came up with a great idea of scoring the metal, and then he used a pipe wrench and stuff like that to get it to bend over. But it was so labor intensive, it's one of those things that probably a simpler answer would be just to screw 2x4s on the outside and then nail the trim piece to those 2x4s. Granted, with this method, I don't really like this kind of end treatment. I have that seam right there, and that's where that gap comes into effect right there. But I have a feeling with that whenever I paint it all, that'll kind of go away, and it's going to rot anyways. This was really just a exercise for me to learn welding. So next up is just a little cosmetic work. I had to go to the store and buy some more 2x4s. This stuff was just stuff I had outside and weathered in the back. And then I'm just going to throw some Rust-Oleum on it and call them done. So there we go. A little garden for my apartment backyard dog run. I like the fact that it's really inexpensive using used barrels. Yes, I did have to buy the steel new, but I'm sure somebody resourceful could scavenge that around. And considering this is COVID money, it is a lot less costly than a wood one. I like the fact that, unlike a lot of the wood raised garden beds, it got it up off the ground, because this very small yard, it retained a lot of little run-around room for a small dog. Plus the fact that since I'm in Texas hill country and it gets really hot, you know, at midday the sun's going to be blaring straight down, and then it's just going to come over here. So the hottest sun is going to be hitting it. Well, a small dog has a little escape, a little shade path all the way down if they want to get out of the sun, or they could just come in. My problem now is that now that I've built it, I have no clue what to do with it. So I've reached out to a friend and fellow content creator who has a lot of experience with gardening in addition to fine woodworking teaching. She taught at Pratt University in their woodworking program, and in addition to running it. She's starting two large farms that are both teaching exercises, teaching opportunities, and right now she is building an entire timber frame building to teach a lot of other crafts such as fine woodworking, green woodworking, blacksmithing, and stuff like that. And I've seen her on Instagram and YouTube, and I know she knows how to garden. So, Ann of all trades, please help, because I'm clueless as what to do next.
Okay, friends, you've got your garden, and now what the heck are you going to put inside it? I'm Ann of all trades. I am friends with Sean because I'm also a woodworker who happens to do quite a bit of farming as well. Let's get the dirt on dirt. Not all dirt is created equal, and what we want to put into our garden beds is soil, a living organism full of all kinds of microbes and bacterias and living organisms. Soil is a living body that will give our plants what they need to grow big and tall. If you're just filling up a raised bed like Sean is, then your regular run-of-the-mill raised bed soil you can get from the hardware store is a great option to start with. If you want to actually do a big garden like mine, then you're going to want to go with a more affordable route, and that starts with basically building up your own soil. So when I moved here, this was totally just clay. It was baked in the sun. It would be dusty when it was windy, and really nothing but weeds would grow here. But I've been working on building up the soil, and I have tons of resources on my YouTube channel, Ann of all trades, where you can find out how to make your own healthy, alive, living, vibrant soil that can support your plants. But since a lot of us are just starting out with gardening, let's talk about the basics. Plants need three things to stay alive. They need healthy soil, they need oxygen to their roots, and, well, I guess they need four things because they also need sunlight and water. But water can be a tricky one because one of the first mistakes that beginner gardeners make is actually watering their garden too much. Roots of plants are living, breathing organisms, and they actually need oxygen to be able to survive. So if we water our plants too much, it actually can suffocate our plants. So there are two things that we can do for that. Is first, we can let our plants tell us when they're actually thirsty. A thirsty plant will be droopy and just look a little bit sad, and that's a great time to then go and water your plants. The other thing that we can do is make sure that our garden beds have plenty of good drainage. We don't want all the water to just flow out and, waste our watering efforts or our actual water itself, but we do want to make sure that it is in fact draining out at least a little bit so that we know that our plants aren't just sitting in water. So if you're doing metal garden beds like what Sean did, make sure that there's some drainage holes in the bottom of it so that that water can drain.
Drainage in bag soil? I can do that.
rookie mistake people make is planting their plants too close together. Now, when our little seedlings or our seeds are so tiny, it's so easy to put them just all over the place. But if you do that, as they start to grow, they'll start to crowd each other out and block the sunlight, that one of three things that every plant needs to survive. And so we can sometimes overplant, and the way that we avoid that is by thinking about how big the plant is actually going to get. So take a look at these plants here. These are pretty much perfectly spaced because they have room to grow and expand as I've picked other plants around them. But over here, you see that there's barely any space in between these maturing plants. And that is a great thing, because that means that weeds will not have access to sun, and I'll spend a whole lot less time weeding my garden.
What? Spacing's important? You mean I gotta now read all these instructions on the pad? And you know guys don't take directions. Where are my glasses?
If you look at the pathways in my garden, you might see a familiar substance: wood chips. As a woodworker, I generate a ton of shavings in the wood shop, and these actually turn into fantastic garden tools because wood, another living, breathing organism, tends to soak up water as it hits the wood, and then it stores the water within its fibers and then slowly releases that water over time as the sun hits it. So not only can this basically act as a little self-watering device for your garden, it will also provide an insulation point. The worst thing you can do in a garden is have bare soil exposed to the sun, because all of the water is going to evaporate off of it. Then when the wind blows, it'll turn into dust and blow away. But if we put a bunch of wood chips on top of our soil after our plants have emerged from the soil, that can stop the sun beating down in the erosion process. It'll trap water down beneath the soil, which means you'll have to water less often. And basically any species of wood can be used within reason. If you're doing a ton of wood turning with exotic woods, you probably don't want to use that. And also if you're using a lot of treated woods or woods with glue or other chemicals in it, then you probably don't want to put that right near your food source either. But I've found that basically any species that grows locally in the US can work. A lot of people are really worried about using, actually these shavings are in fact walnut shavings. A lot of people are worried about that because walnut has a chemical compound that is concentrated in the roots and the leaves of the tree called juglone, which actually poisons all the plants around it so that nothing can grow up and compete for sunlight with that walnut tree. However, I said that the juglone is concentrated in the leaves and the roots and not really in the middle part of the tree, which is where we use our wood from. If you are really worried about juglone though, that's fine. Use it in your garden pathways where it can, if there is any juglone that actually remains in the wood shavings, that can be dispersed into your garden pathways and then you don't have to weed as much. So there you go. But If I were given a choice, I would choose pine because it smells nice and it doesn't tend to harbor a lot of bugs, and it decomposes really quickly so that then it builds up your garden soil. Again, I have lots more resources on that on my channel, and that's what you need to know about wood chips in the garden.
Shadings? Oh, I have shadings. Today they're cream colored.
Oh wait, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I mentioned that there was 3 things that plants need. They need soil, water, and sun. But if you live in a super hot climate like Sean does, you want to make sure that your plants can get some afternoon shade. So where you put your garden becomes very important, especially if you think about what it is that you actually want to grow in your garden. So Sean would be okay putting his metal barrels in a really hot, sunny place if he was planning on growing things like super hot peppers and he knew that he could water that garden regularly, because that sun beating down, even with a heavy layer of mulch, is still going to really want to dry out those plants and make it hard for you to grow anything. But if you want to grow tender things like lettuce and strawberries and things that tend to wilt really quickly when it's sitting on your counter when you're cooking, then you want to make sure that you put your garden somewhere where it gets some afternoon shade. And definitely, though, make sure it's getting at least some sun some part of the day. If you live in a colder climate like where I used to live in Washington, you can do like basically anywhere, and you want the sunniest place possible because sun is such a precious resource there. But think about the solar power that you need for your garden and place your plants accordingly. Cheers!
Now you tell me?
I do want to thank Ann. If y'all haven't checked her out yet, please go check out our YouTube channel, our Instagram page, and she is starting a new Instagram page for the new craft school that's coming out. She really did help me out in setting all this up and organizing the plants and stuff like that. And I'll put a coda at the end of this video to show you all I did. It was really a fun video for me because basically all I did was film myself learning and experimenting on the fly. Devil may care attitude. Who knew how it was going to come out? Really different for this channel. But it's kind of a good segue in that you now know it's always worth the effort to learn. Great. And share with others. Y'all be safe and have fun. So here's a quick tour of the backyard so far. All that's left really to do is to add a gate and get me a dog. Here we go. Now, y'all please feel free to tell me what I did wrong planting these things down in the comments, because other people would do it. And I will tell you this, I was not concerned with ultimate yield, more of a variety. So I probably planted stuff too close so that they won't grow their full potential. But if I get a few things, I'll be happy. Now on the two corners right here, I have the horizontally cut 55-gallon drum things, and they're about 25 gallons each here and over there. And on both of them, I planted a blueberry tree because it's going to be small and bushy down below. And then up here, I planted a Fuji apple tree simply because I like Fuji apples. On the two next to the building where they get a little bit more shade, I have Meyer lemons in both of them. And then on this one, I put in a guacamole tree. And on the other one, I put a key lime tree, so that they will share those two and probably bush out a little bit. I'm told that these grow together okay. I will say that these look fairly sickly because I bought them in the little pots about a week ago, and I've actually been overwatering them because I looked at them, I thought they looked dried out and stuff like that, so I kept watering them, and it just made things worse. On all the pots, I try to keep all the little labels right here, just stapled them down here. And then where I couldn't, where you see it, I just put in little blue tape. This one right here, I have mainly bell peppers of a bunch of different colors and stuff like that. And for fun, I threw in some broccoli. In this one right here, I have all my hot peppers. And you'll notice some of them have these terracotta pots in the middle. That's because I put herbs in those. Because the herbs I picked out are supposedly to take care of the bugs that like these particular plants. But I've been told herbs can overrun a garden. So if anything happens, I can just pull the terracotta out and move them elsewhere. Oh, look. Chupacabras are back. Yeah, that's why the fence is there. Okay, over here I have my tomatoes. Again, herbs are in there. And I'm not a big fan of tomatoes, but my mom likes them. And over here I have bell peppers and stuff like that. On this side I've got squash and lettuce. Probably overpacked those a little bit. And on this one is just a bunch of stuff that my parents said that they wanted to see if I could grow it. So yeah, corn in a container, probably not going to work, but hey, for the fun. So there we go. Just a little small container garden outside a small apartment in a college town.